Oh, hi. You thought the countdown said 2 minutes, 30 seconds, not 0 minutes when I'd show up, but I'm here. Hello, Marvelites. Welcome. You are watching a very special How to Draw Live presented by Marvel Strike Force. I'm your host for the evening, Ryan Panagos, aka Agent M, and I'm very excited to be here. Look, time has no meaning, as you just saw. It's fine. We're going to have a good time tonight because we are going to see Marvel Comics artist Marcus To bring to life Shang-Chi. It's very exciting. I'm very much looking forward to seeing that and to talking with Marcus for the next hour or so. And of course, Shang-Chi is available now as a character in the mobile game Marvel Strike Force. And right now, there's a special Shang-Chi event going on in the game. For those of you who don't know, Marvel Strike Force is a turn-based squad RPG where superheroes and supervillains can team up in a fight against enemy threats like Ultimus and Doctor Doom. Yes, Doctor Doom. You can download Marvel Strike Force for free in the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. And you can see some really cool gameplay of Shang-Chi right there. Looks dope. All right, so the Shang-Chi we'll see today is inspired by Marvel Studios' Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which is going to be really cool. If you haven't seen it yet, please go check it out. I saw it last Thursday. Woo, it was terrific. But look, we got to get going with this. We are joined by the mega talented Marcus To, who's going to show us how to draw Shang-Chi today. Hello, Marcus.
Hey.
Hey, there you go. I'm very excited. This is really the first time we've met, even though you've been working for Marvel for a long time. I've been at Marvel 15 years. So can you give some of our viewers some insight into some of the Marvel projects you've worked on over your career?
A few. My first ever Marvel Comics gig was actually part of Civil War. I did an issue of Black Panther. That was really my first ever Marvel Comics gig. Since then, I've done books like New Warriors, New Avengers, some Spider-Man stuff sprinkled here and there, Next Gen. But my more recent comic is Excalibur, as you can see here. I've been on the book as the main artist for about the last 20 or so issues, so it's been a wild ride so far.
Yeah, look, I'm sure we'll talk about it. I miss seeing Apocalypse in the pages of Excalibur, but there's story reasons, of course. We'll get into more of that. And for everybody who is watching, we want to hear from you in the chat. Let us know if you have any questions for us as Marcus draws Shang-Chi. And I know we do these live streams. Y'all are like, you ain't live. This is pre-recorded. It's live. You saw the countdown go from 5 minutes to 0, then back to 5 minutes and 2/3. It's fine. We're good. Actually, we have one on Twitch. Dr. C on Twitch says they're going to give it a shot drawing along. Dr. C, please. That's super cool. Let us know how you do drawing Shang-Chi. All right. With that said, we should start this rolling. Marcus, can you start with what you got going on and tell us how you start a drawing of a character such as Shang-Chi?
Well, I mean, for something like this, a single image, and sometimes I want to give myself a bit of kind of a grid just to give myself a little bit of framework, so I'm not drawing the character tilting too much, or I want it to be centered to the piece as much as possible. And then so sometimes I'll give myself a very rough grid so I can give myself an idea, especially drawing digitally. Sometimes you spin it around a bunch of times and your orientation gets lost a little bit. So I start off with that. And there's different ways you can, start a drawing. But lately I've been enjoying drawing, kind of starting with the body first to kind of give an idea of where to place the character on the page. Some people like starting with the head, but I find sometimes when I draw the head first, all of a sudden I have way too much room at the top and not enough at the bottom. So yeah, that's usually how I kind of draw, especially a single image like this, where it's really just one character. So you want them to be the focus, of the image.
Yeah, and a character like Shang-Chi is a martial artist, and I think of iconic poses for a lot of our
Hmm.
superheroes. You know, you think of Wolverine, he got the claws, or you think of Spider-Man, and maybe he's jumping or he's whipping, what have you. Hulk is smashing. Shang-Chi, all the martial arts. You can probably go with any pose that looks really cool. How did you come upon what you wanted to have him doing in the shot?
Well, I think part of it is, I mean, we were discussing about what pose to have him in, and kind of what we came up with was more of a ready pose. We wanted him to look like he's ready for battle. He's getting prepared to strike because he's not the type of person that would hit first. We like to have him, in a very strong stance. So body forward, legs apart, very powerful pose, ready to kick butt.
Hell yeah. You drew Shang-Chi relatively recently, right? For Marvel
Yeah.
Comics?
Yes. I worked on the what was it called? Marvel Voices, and I did a short story of Shang-Chi with Jean Luen Yang.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, it was really fun to draw. Really cool short story that we got to explore a little bit of his, what makes him tick and things like that. So it was
That's
great.
the what if type story, right? Where the monks are sort of they follow along with Uatu, the Watcher.
Yep.
Is that the one I'm
Yeah.
thinking of? Yeah, yeah. That story
It's
was
it's
was really fun.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is kind of like battling yourself. In a lot of ways, Shang-Chi was, could have went his life could have went in so many different directions based on, how his father and what his father wanted for him. And he was facing in that story, he faces his pretty much himself and the demons within himself of what could have been if he didn't join the Avengers.
Yeah. That issue again is called Marvel's Voices Identity. It just came out, I think, 2 weeks ago. Characters in that book are like Shang-Chi, Ms. Marvel, Jubilee, Silk, Jimmy Woo, and it celebrates the greatest Asian superheroes and creators in the Marvel universe. It's really really wonderful. I think that we've been celebrating AAPI and creators over the last year in really wonderful ways. So you're in great company in that book, and I think everybody else who's in that is in great company alongside you. So it's really cool to hear you talk about that story.
Yeah, it was, and just to hype up some people, like I've Darren Tan was, a driving force in that book. He's the editor of the book, and I've known Darren for a long time. With our, both of us have been in the industry for a good while, and this is one of the first times I get to work with him fully, and it's always fun to kind of explore those kind of stories with people that you trust and you want to see do awesome things like what we did with Marvel Voices. And I'm glad that book came out, and a lot of people seem to really like it, and hopefully you can do more of those kind of things.
Yeah, the Marvel's Voices books all year long have been really something special. There's a Comunidades one coming out really soon, which as a Latino and Hispanic person, I'm very much looking forward to that one.
Hmm.
Over on Twitch, we have a comment from Clear Sky 46, and they say that the comic shop by their school has a picture of the Excalibur comic that you showed. I love, when we have viewers who can recognize those things. Clear Sky 46, let us know the name of that comic shop. I'm happy to give a good comic shop a shout out.
Oh, no doubt, for sure.
Yeah. All right. As you're rolling along, do obviously you're working from a sketch into as you're going further along. When you're doing actual comic book pages, do you do thumbnails before you start the pages?
Yeah, I mean, I totally do. You know, I always think about the thumbnails as kind of where you get a lot of all your thinking done. A lot of the decisions are made during that time of doing layout. So I would get, like a script from the writer and the editors, and I'd go over it and start doing layouts of different forms of it, to get myself ready to kind of make plans of how I'm going to tackle each panel, each page, etc. And it's probably the most important part in my opinion. Beyond layouts, it's mostly just execution, as some might say.
Sure. As you keep drawing, of course, we are looking at Shang-Chi, that is inspired by the brand new film, Marvel Studios' Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which is out right now. In the film, we learn about Shang-Chi, and he's been trained since childhood in the martial arts. Shang-Chi is forced to confront the past he thought he left behind when he is drawn back into the web of his father, the head of the mysterious Ten Rings organization that has lurked in the shadows of the MCU since the very beginning. I got to see the film, as I mentioned, on Thursday night, opening night. I had a whole bunch figures, some Shang-Chi action figures I had. I see some Marvel Legends behind you. I had some Marvel Legends figures that I gave out to a bunch of kids at the show. I gave out a bunch of comics, and it was just it's nothing beats going to the movies and seeing a really an amazing Marvel Studios show with a great crowd, and it felt great. It felt really great.
Totally. I had the chance to watch it as well last week on Friday. It was a spectacle. That's the best way I can put it. It was, fantastic. The mystery, the fantasy, it's just wonderful seeing, how great that movie turned out, and how I've always loved Michelle Yeoh and Tony Leung. Like growing up as someone of Chinese descent, especially living in North America, you have a little bit of you're always trying to find your identity and your connection to your culture, and it's watching movies from those A-list stars in Hong Kong was kind of my introduction to my own culture and people that look like me, and then seeing them in a big Hollywood movie. I mean, that was amazing. I love seeing it. I hope to see both of them in future movies, Marvel or not.
Yeah, and also for anybody who's out there and they've been exposed to these incredible actors for the first time, what an amazing road they have ahead of them to like go back through their catalogs and see some of the stuff that Tony and Michelle have done over the years. We'll get back to talking about the movie, I'm sure, but we do have a couple of comments and questions here coming through over on YouTube. Rising Kieran says, I think it's interesting that Marcus is drawing on a diagonal orientation.
Technically, I'm kind of not. The way I try to see it is kind of how my hand will give the right movement. So I change my orientation to give that to keep that motion that I like and the control that I want. So you'll see me as we draw a lot of times kind of spin the page a bunch of times over. And I apologize if it makes you guys dizzy. But yeah, and one of the most important times to do that is actually the inking phase, because a lot of the control comes from a certain angle of at least for me, a certain angle of how you place the pen on paper, and it's similar to how you place the pen on your digital tablet. And so therefore I would spin it just to kind of get the get my hand in a comfortable position to make the line that I would like to see.
So you did this even when you were drawing on paper?
Oh yeah. For sure.
Yeah. We've got another from here on YouTube. Hollowfield asks, what programs do you prefer for digital art? I don't know if there's any specific program other than, whatever is drawing, like Photoshop or what have you.
I mean, everyone, I would argue that everyone has a different taste, and depending on how you like to draw makes a big difference. So I am a big fan of Clip Studio because it doesn't eat up my memory, when I use it. It's not as heavy of a program as Photoshop, but it has its limitations. Photoshop is more of a graphics program, So if you're coloring or you need to utilize more graphic elements, Photoshop is what some prefer better over Clip Studio. But if you're able to, the only way to know for yourself is to try it out. And I used to draw on Photoshop, and I used to draw paper, pen and paper, and I've done probably hundreds of pages on both, or all three, I guess, if you want to count this one too. But like it's for sure a person to person kind of situation.
Yeah, for sure. We have an answer, I kind of, from Clear Sky 46. I asked about the comic shop that they went to. Clear Sky 46 says, I don't know if it actually has a name. There's just a big sign that says comics. Clear Sky, I bet they have a name. Most comic shops do, but so I used to live in Queens on Long Island. One of the comic shops I would go to was right on the border of Queens and Long Island in New York, and they also just had a sign that said comics, big black sign with yellow lettering still that says comics, but their name was Superhero Comics. So there's a name there. You never know, but thank you for answering that. I appreciate you. We have another question on Twitch, and Twitch user RG Villain asking, how many iterations of a layout do you typically go through, Marcus?
Oh man, that if it's a cover, a good amount. Like 4 or 5 maybe sometimes. If it is like a comic book, sometimes it's like the first shot is basically where you have it, because there's so many ways to tell a story, and it's very seldom that there's any necessarily wrong way or better way. It's just a way, and I've found that when it comes to telling a story, especially if I've been working in the industry for almost 20 years now, so after a while it generally is a discussion with the writer, as layouts are done. If I have any questions about how we could do this, I'll talk to the editor, I'll talk to the writer, and we'll discuss it, and generally we'll come to a consensus of kind of letting me choose, but with the right information for what the group is trying to say to the audience. And I always find that that's the most important thing about telling a story, is like, what do we want to say to you, and how best to make it the easiest to kind of convey our message to you, the reader, right? So and generally, with how great Marvel writers are, it's really easy to write off of those scripts, because Marvel has some of the best writers in the world, and they're doing amazing work, and how they kind of convey a message to me, to what they want to do. It's almost so crystal clear that I can't mess up.
So do you prefer more detailed scripts as opposed to, say, Marvel style, or a hybrid, or I think we don't get many writers, I guess, these days writing Marvel style. But I don't know if that's something that you as an artist, want to see more of, less of, or just whatever works for you works for you.
In my opinion, that comes with kind of time. I think if I've been working with someone for a long time, and like Teeny and I have been working for the last couple of years, and I think we really understand each other, and we spoke to each other about what we want. And I personally told her a bit, because I like it that she writes more for me to see, and she understands that a lot of it may not be ever shown in the comic. But how I see it is, I'll read it and I'll understand her and what she wants more if she writes more. But that's always, dependent on the person, right? Because some people like to be less verbose, and others want to kind of, give you the idea and the references in their mind that they're thinking of, even when they're writing. So, I mean, I personally kind of like both, but I do lean on more a little bit, just so I get a full picture of, what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's one of the tragedies of just we have this amazing format of comics, right? And the end product is what everybody sees, but we don't always, as a lot of our fans and readers don't always get to see the sketches, the layouts, the scripts that have all the details and the messages and the things, which are great for all of you who are creating the books. It's something that I wish more fans got to experience. But you know what? I can ask to see them if I want to, so I win no matter what. We have another. So there's a question from Twitch or Sky46 asking, how have you been an artist? You said around 20 years. What was your how did you break into comics?
I broke in. Well, I don't know if things are different now. I mean, they're different in a way now, but I broke in kind of similarly to what I think I remember what it was like breaking in, if that makes any sense, which was going to conventions, dropping off your portfolios to Marvel to look at. And so actually, well, my story about how I broke in was I came into San Diego back in the day when you can just buy, you could literally buy a Friday ticket at the box office, right? Which is not a thing anymore. But I didn't know what I was doing really, so I started to hit up the conventions, and I went to when CB Cebulski did the Breaking into Comics the Marvel Way. So I sat through that and I took notes as to what they were looking for, how to present your portfolio, because that makes a big difference as well. So I compiled a photocopy kind of packet of my things, and then I dropped it off. And they told me that they would look over it in the evening, and if you were chosen, they will put your name on a board the next morning. And at that time, I was 19 years old. I only got one day of the show, so I thought to myself whether or not I should even come back, because I just didn't have the money. But I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go do it. Whatever happens, happens. And then I drove all around San Diego looking for a hotel that night and everything like that, like the whole nine when it came to that. And, like, as anyone that went to San Diego know, that's a next to impossible thing last minute, right? So I had to drive, I don't know, half an hour outside the city to a place called National City. Slept in a motel. Could not sleep because I was just anxious and just paranoid. And then the next day I looked on the board at Marvel and my name was there. And that was my first kind of introduction to CB. He looked over my stuff, and that was my kind of my in. But it took a little longer after that to get full-time work. But that was basically my first kind of thing.
It's amazing. A couple of names I just want to, for anybody watching, Teeny is Teeny Howard, writer of Excalibur. CB Cebulski is Marvel Comics' current editor-in-chief. Back in the day, he used to be manager of talent relations, and he was an editor and is a writer and all kinds of stuff. And one of the things that I've always heard us say, whether it's CB or somebody else, at the Breaking into Comics, the Marvel Way panels, was always breaking into out of jail. The way someone does it works for them, but once they do it, that way is closed off for everyone else. So 19-year-old Marcus Toe sitting in the panel room, like taking this advice and doing it that way, and like all those steps, that's a singular way that it happens. It's very rare. Most people will never have that experience again. And so kudos to you. I'm glad you were able to stick it out and find a room and scrape together and keep that money and get that, because we've been watching the stream. If you just joined us, you are watching Marvel How to Draw Live, presented by Marvel Strike Force. Marvel Comics artist Marcus Toe is drawing Shang-Chi in the style of the character from Marvel Studios, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. We do have another question in here from YouTube. It's Taylor over at YouTube. There's a couple of things here, Marcus, so I'll go through them.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Taylor asks, how do you go about getting a quote, animated character style while maintaining realistic facial elements, and how do you play with proportions? And Taylor's question is interesting because I did want to mention that one of my favorite things about your work, Marcus, is your facial acting. I think you're such a great storyteller in so many ways, but really conveying emotion and through facial acting is such an important part of comic book storytelling. And I think you do such a superb job, and I can even see it there in what you have on the screen, and like his eyebrows and the nose and everything. So kudos to you, and thank you, Taylor, for that wonderful question. So talking about trying to get an animated style that is also realistic, is there some sort of secret sauce for you, Marcus?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. It's very kind of you, very generous of you to say. I've always said that style is is basically your interpretation of the real world. It's kind of like what you see goes into your brain, and somehow what goes into your hand through your hand is kind of your interpretation of what you like to see or what you want to see through the world. But the best advice I can give you when it comes to these kind of things is to learn structure. So a lot of the human body and even animal bodies and the structure of the universe generally has certain limitations and certain things that are very similar to each other. So our bodies are just like any other kind of machine, works a certain way. A lot of the visual things, at least for anybody, is generally kind of the same. So if you learn the structure of the body, you learn the structure of a house, you learn the structure of things around you, in turn you will be able to morph it the way you want to and still keep that realism, right? So whenever you learn about the structure of the thing you're drawing, and that will help you kind of morph it into a more animated version, if you wish, as you go along. That's why a lot of people talk about, learning the basics of drawing first. That's why you're drawing a bowl of fruit constantly, or you're drawing, like you're drawing life drawing for a long, long time. The point is trying to make sure that your structure of your drawings stay consistent. So when you say pull this out of your mind and draw things out of memory, it still gives that realism, even when you throw everything else to the wall, right? With your perhaps a different style, a different way of expressing what you see. So that's what I've tried to learn, and even still to this day, I try to keep up with that learning as I go along.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you. We're going to let you continue drawing for a second. For everybody who has joined us on the show, of course, this stream is presented by Marvel Strike Force. If you don't know, Marvel Strike Force is a turn-based squad RPG where superheroes and supervillains can team up and fight against enemy threats such as Ultimus and Doctor Doom. Shang-Chi is available now as a character in the game, like some sort of synergy between all of our groups here at Marvel. It's wonderful. There's a special Shang-Chi event going on now through September 17th in Marvel Strike Force, and in the event, players have the chance to earn 10 medallions. If you collect 7 of them, you get a pretty cool award, which is the MCU-inspired costume called Shang-Chi's Battle Armor. So if you are a player of the game, get up in there, go through the event, get yourself some of those medallions so you can gear up and you just want to get your character stronger. Someone on Twitter, a pal of mine, just tweeted that they had been working really hard grinding up their Jubilee in Marvel Strike Force. So there's characters for everyone, but Shang-Chi is in there right now. If you are playing Marvel Strike Force and you are lucky enough and you get Shang-Chi, there's a bunch of great stuff you should know about the character. He hits hard and he attacks often, so he's going to be a really intense force for you on your squad. He has powerful synergies on ward defense and heroes for hire. He clears negative effects from enemies, which is a huge boon, especially as you get deeper and deeper into combat in that game. He punishes enemies that have pop, which is nasty. It's real good. So he helps your squad, and when the other squad has some buffs, he punishes them, which I like. And Shang-Chi's in-game classifications are hero, city, skill, brawler, and heroes for hire, which is rad as heck. I know we've got some Marvel Strike Play footage showing off Shang-Chi in his MCU-inspired battle armor. Producers, can we show that off? Very cool, very cool. When you just, shaded in some of the blacks there, it just feels like the drawing went 50 steps ahead in like 2 seconds. Now, for any of our viewers may or may not know sort of the art of comic books, there are multiple disciplines that work to create comics. Marcus, do you typically ink your, pencil the pages and ink yourself, or do you work with an inker?
I used to work with a lot of very talented inkers like Ray McCarthy, LeBeau Underwood, Richard Zajac. After a while, though, I kind of felt like I wanted to try my own hand at, fully finishing my pages myself. I was, kind of looking for a certain look that I didn't feel like I could achieve without figuring out how to do it myself. So when I was working on New Avengers, I had started to ink myself, and I felt the need to. I didn't really like that look either, so that's what kind of brought me to digital. And I think it's that journey of discovery in a lot of ways. You have this idea in your head of what perhaps you want, but you're not achieving it quite so much as you draw, and you keep on looking for ways to kind of find a way to get that. And I really felt comfortable drawing things digitally after a few tries, and I kind of it morphed into me using digital as a tool to do both penciling and inking of my own work.
Nice. As Marcus was talking about, there's kind of like no right or wrong. It works for any particular artist, but there's great benefits to having it. I remember talking with Ryan Stegman, who we did How to Draw with, and he used to ink himself, kind of only exclusively, and then started working with JP Blair as his inker, and sort of his art sort of blossomed and bloomed. So there's no wrong for every killer. Just have to find what makes the most sense for what they're trying to achieve and sort of the work that you're trying to do. So it's pretty cool.
And
speaking of,
I always think.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. No. I was just thinking about great teams because in a lot of ways that's the same thing that happened to you have great teams from the past like Tim Townsend and Joe Madureira and things, and they just make a fantastic team and the perfect look for their style.
Yeah, of course. Over on Twitch, Meep Dragon 56 says, "Wow, this inking is amazing." So I think it all comes together. He's got some good hair right there, looking fantastic. Let's see. Marcus, what are some of the artists that really inspired you as you were either as getting into comics as a fan, or starting to think about it as a career?
I grew up in the generation of the Jim Lees, the Joe Mads, through X-Men. I was introduced to their work, and that really kind of made me excited to go to the comic store, and it made me excited to try to draw and emulate them and all those things. And I felt like that really kind of started it off. And then as I got older, getting into the industry, I had a wonderful chance of being learning from Michael Turner, Francis Manapul, Ramon Perez, a lot of A-listers, and I've been very blessed to be counted among a lot of my peers as a professional. And to this day, it's guys like Stuart Immonen, who's a consummate professional for many years, and Cully Hamner. I can go on, and because a lot of times when you're drawing, especially as a career, sometimes it's not always about necessarily the style you're looking for, or even just it's the excitement that another creator can help bring to how you approach art as a whole, that I'm very blessed to have ample opportunity to spend time with these people.
For sure. Over on YouTube, Nesty Angel says, "Keep up the great work, Marcus."
Yes, Nesty. Hopefully he's doing okay. I know I met him at a convention, and that's another one of those kind of things that's fun that, since we haven't had conventions in a while, seeing them online is a great joy.
I know. I miss going to cons and seeing fans that we would go to C2E2 in Chicago every year. It's one of my favorite shows, and there were these two young girls who came up every year to me and the other Marvel staffers. They were cosplayers. They would have drawings of some of us, like myself and one of my co-hosts, and they were always so cool and so fun to talk to. Or going to San Diego and seeing all the people who come for buying the pins at the Marvel booth. Like, there's so many people who you just don't get to see right now, that like, when you think about it, it's like, oh man, I miss all those great people. Yeah. Ooh, Claire Sky 46 on Twitch asks Marcus, who is your favorite character to draw?
Oh, that's a tough one, because I change my mind all the time, because like, sometimes you get really excited about one, and and then every after a while you kind of get excited for another. But I really enjoyed drawing Gambit and Rogue during my time on Excalibur. I love drawing Spider-Man. He's always really fun to draw. Yeah, I'm kind of sad that Rogue made it to the X-Men and I don't get to draw her in my book anymore. But I understand. I get it.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of Gambit. I know he's a great character, but I think that I don't like him. Although in the last couple of years, I've grown to like him more through his relationship with Rogue. He's become a better person around the woman he loves, which is what have you. Marcus, just want to let you know we're going on about 40 minutes now. On terms of your sketch, it's looking incredible. How much more you just for, like, give the fans a sense of what else you want to do to this piece? What else is there for you to put on it?
Well, I have to color it still, so there's a little bit of extra work that we're gonna do to this one. I gotta put on the design on his chest and arms, and then some detail on his legs, because I kind of just blacked it in. What I like to do sometimes with the shapes like that, with the the strong black and white shapes, I like to kind of almost like a carving, where I will put it all in one color and then go into it afterwards with white. Like, I'll even start it right now where you kind of give a little bit more detail depending on how you like the lighting, how you choose to have the lighting. And this is where structure comes in, because I know that this muscle look is there, or the pant leg, would fold at the knees, and then you would see perhaps the calf. So you would start pulling out pieces of the body, and kind of exactly like carving, you would carve out, highlights to give the body a little bit more depth and a form.
Yeah. What's wild to me is you are doing those pieces of his leg when you were doing them upside down, and like visualizing that, to me, I was like, man, that's wild. Good. You are who you are because you do what you do so well. Over on Twitch, MeepDragon56 asks, Marcus, are you self-taught in drawing?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of us have to learn on our own, but I would not say that I'm necessarily self-taught, because I you learn from so many ways, and so many different people. I've been very lucky to be a part of an artist studio here in Toronto called Raid, and we learn from each other all the time when it comes to technique, tools of the trade. Um, I studied. I was studied under Michael Turner when I first started comics. I learned from just even, I used to host drink and draws in Toronto, and I learned from people here. But I didn't technically go to school, right? So, and my mom taught me how to draw when I was a kid. So that was, you know, I may have, quote unquote, taught myself, in a way, but I for sure didn't do it alone. That's for sure.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about working in an artist studio? Because something that is, I think for most artists, it's a very solitary career. It's a lot of artists are in their homes, wherever they are, in their studios, and not necessarily around other artists. What is that like for you? If you can elaborate any more on being side by side with other artists working on other projects, and seeing characters that you may share, in various books at times.
Yeah, I'd love to. So my first job in comics was in Michael Turner's studio, and it was a great experience. I got to learn from him, as well as guys like Peter Steigerwald, Micah Gunnell, Coy Turnbull. A lot of people were there, and the feeling that we're not all competing. We're all just trying to get better, and we all have ideas and share those ideas. So when I moved back to Canada, I really hungered for that same experience. So when I found out about the great artist community in Toronto, it really kind of pushed me to try to make my way into to live in Toronto, and a lot of it stems from kind of watching how people, not even just drawing, but how people, build their careers, I see them working every single night, every single day, working on their craft, drawing books, drawing anything that they can get a hands on. And that really, encouraged me to know that we don't all know everything right off the bat. We all think or hope that we can draw everything perfect all the time. But, watching how other people, my peers, do it, and know that they're learning every single day, just kind of gives me both the confidence that I can one day get to that point, but also, just kind of be patient with myself and my progress as an artist, that we're all kind of pushing the same, locomotive. We're all going in the same direction. And that really, really helped me kind of round my whole career off, as both figure out my expectations, but how to be a professional, because it is important that you don't just draw well. You have to communicate with your editors, you communicate with your colorists and your writers, and you have to be on time. You got to do all these things, and it doesn't necessarily always you don't learn that on your own. That's a lot of the things that you don't really learn that on your own. You only learn it from either other people or trial and error, you know. And I feel like being a part of an artist studio, I have learned how to be a professional and how to become the creator I want to be in the long run.
Yeah, very cool. We've got a couple questions that came in here over on Twitch. Livy_Mo asks a very difficult question. What's your favorite comic? And I'll narrow it down. What's your favorite Marvel comic?
That is a tough one. Oh man. Like historically, I guess. What like?
Sure. Like if somebody, when you think favorite comic, what comes to mind? Like for me, I'll probably go to Infinity Gauntlet,
Mm,
because I read that when I was like 10 years old, and it had such an impression on me. That's why I've tried to destroy half the universe multiple times, and it hasn't worked out yet. But Infinity Gauntlet, and for me, the Executioner song storyline of X books back
mm-hmm.
from the early 90s. And I think, that's just for me. What about for you?
I think so. When I was younger, I didn't have the money to buy complete runs of things. But when I was finally able to, I think the one that struck a chord with me the most was um, the Ed Brubaker's run on Captain America is probably my favorite from uh, uh, the when the return of Bucky and then to Civil War. I can't. Well, what was the art storyline? I think it was Civil War, Return of Bucky, and then Death of Captain America or something like that. Like that
It,
whole
it
run was just amazing.
Yeah, it goes on a lot longer than I think people remember at this point,
Yeah.
because I think the Winter Soldier storyline is so huge, Death of Captain America was so huge, but it goes on for somewhere around 50 issues, and it's really quite fantastic.
Yeah.
The whole thing that Ed did with some amazing artists. I was starting at Marvel when that was really picking up, and man, so good.
Yep.
Over on Twitch, Green Gully asks, "Do you still draw traditionally, or is like 95% digital these days?" So we talked a little bit about that, but do you do anything on board at all?
Um. No.
Yeah.
I do for obviously conventions. Commissions obviously are mostly um, on board. Um, it's funny because most of the time I don't like doing things on board because I'm a bit of a neat freak, and this is the cleanest way. When you play around with inks and stuff like that, man, like fingers, clothes, they all get dirty.
Oh, yeah. No, I get it. I When you talking about that reminds me of, so I used to work at Wizard Magazine,
Hmm.
and back in the day, one of my coworkers, one of my friends over there, he would do a lot of interviews for us, and he had an interview with Jim Lee at one point, and he had a sketchbook. I think it was at a convention. The guy's name was Ben. Ben had a sketchbook with him to when he was interviewing Jim, and Jim's like, "Oh, can I look through that?" And so Jim Lee is looking through Ben's sketchbook of art from other artists, and it's a Nova sketchbook. Richard Rider was
Hmm.
his favorite character, and so Jim says, "Do you mind?" And Ben's like, "No, please do whatever you want. You could set it on fire if you want. You're Jim Lee." And
Hmm.
so Jim pulls out some pens and some pencils and some whiteout, and he proceeds to do the interview. But at the same time, he's drawing this incredible sketch of Richard Rider, aka Nova. And at one point, he like takes a cup, and then he like splatters some whiteout on the page around the cup to get us an effect, and like all this stuff. And it's like it's this beautiful just like piece that comes together. But it is messy, and it's beautiful. It's wonderful to see art come together on a page, but it's also messy if that's not your thing.
Yeah, and you know what? When you're at a convention too, though, that part of the messiness is the show, right? Like I think a lot of people love that. I used to sit beside Francis Manapul all the time, and he was a master of that kind of thing too, where it really kind of made me see kind of different ways that you can present a drawing to people, which doesn't necessarily always work for comics because that a lot of it has to do with other things. Um, but yeah, like the splatter, the messiness, sometimes the visceral kind of act of drawing on a page, kind of almost quote unquote messing up a white page with a bunch of stuff. It just is kind of mesmerizing in a lot of ways because you're creating out of really just a big mess.
Yeah. You keep drawing for a second. I think you're getting close to the colors over here. I just want to let everybody know who's just joined us or has been watching the whole time. You are watching Marvel's How to Draw Live, presented by Marvel Strike Force. We have artist Marcus To drawing Shang-Chi, and this is a Shang-Chi inspired by the character from Marvel Studios Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, who is available now to play in Marvel Strike Force, which is a squad-based tactical RPG that is available on mobile. Go check it out. There's lots of cool stuff in there. We've been talking about Shang-Chi. We've been talking about comics. We'll throw out a little bit of comics info for anybody who doesn't know the character from the books. He is, kind of the greatest fighter in Marvel Comics. I think a lot of people have a lot of opinions about who's the best fighter, but come on. He's the best. He's the best. His first appearance goes all the way back. Wow, I didn't realize we are celebrating 50 years at this point of Shang-Chi. It's his first appearance was in Special Marvel Edition number 15 in 1971, but he's really gone on to become an international hero, doing lots of really cool stuff. He's joined the Heroes for Hire, the Protectors, Agents of Atlas. He's worked alongside the Avengers. He's pretty dang cool. Shang-Chi was raised in a hidden ancient fortress in the comics where he learned martial arts and philosophical disciplines. Through his training, he became the most skilled fighter in the world. And like legit, he trains a lot. So keep that in mind. If anybody wants to be the greatest fighter out there, you're going to have to train a lot. In the current Shang-Chi comics, which are many of them are available now over on Marvel Unlimited, which is a wonderful app that we have that you can download and read. Shang-Chi is rediscovering his family, his roots, and working to right the wrongs done by his father. It is written by Jean Luen Yang with art by D.K. Ruan. Jean Luen Yang is a writer who worked alongside our artist here, Marcus To, on a recent Shang-Chi story. And I'm a big fan of Jean's. I think he's just one of the best, sweetest, warmest, and smartest dudes, and I've really come to love Shang-Chi because of the comics that Gene has been writing over the last year or so. So please do yourself a favor, go read some Shang-Chi comics because they're friggin' great and the character is awesome. Back to what Marcus is working on. Tell us the step and what you're focusing on right now, Marcus.
I am working on what we like to call flats. There's different ways of coloring. There really is a lot of different ways of coloring. I want to try to do this a little bit on a faster side instead of painting over it, but basically it means that I am picking the colors, just a flat color, and this is when a lot of the choices are made for what I want to do with this character, and you're just kind of selecting, just selecting just the flat colors that you're going to use to color this, and then you will use a different layer to do the detail if you will.
Sure. Yeah. Coloring. We have a lot of viewers who check out our streams here. Some of them know comics super well. Some of them don't. So I think that it's important. I don't know that we've really done a lot of coloring on these streams. So this is cool, and seeing the different aspects of bringing a page to life, because it's especially now in the age of digital coloring. It's not a simple thing. It's not just like boop boop bop boop beep boop bop. There's so many ways, and especially if you want to create something that reflects light and proportion and shading. There's so many elements that go into the even just the coloring portion.
Oh yeah, for sure. And a lot of it, I'm still learning myself, and as many of us are artists, we like to dabble as many times as into as many things as possible, because there's different things that you want and want to make your stuff look like, you want to practice on. And it's always a constant kind of battle between making sure that you are doing enough to better yourself and your work, but also staying true to what you're doing, what you want to do. Going back to, say, people that kind of changed their or found themselves in doing their own things. Another person is Mark Brooks. Mark Brooks, who I've known for many, many years, and when he started coloring himself, that was really the end of it. Like, it was awesome. Like, when he found himself and figured it out when he started doing that, and it was amazing to see, because I've seen his work for a lot of years, and when he kind of did his style with his coloring, he blew up. It was amazing.
Yeah, he's also a dirty, rotten scoundrel, and we will have no more talk of Mark Brooks on this. No, I kid.
Oh,
I
yeah.
adore Mark. He's wonderful, an incredible artist. He's a pal. So, yeah, and yeah, I love watching artists as you say, like, figure out the thing, and like when it starts to click and change and work for them. It's so cool. We have another question over here from Twitch user MeepDragon56, who asks, are you using layers?
I am. So I'll have the line layer, which is this one. I'm kind of turning it on and off. And I have my coloring layer, or my flat layer, and I'm gonna add. I have this gray layer as a selection tool if I want to. Sometimes I like place the thing just so I have a reference to select a body, as opposed to, so I can color within the lines, as it were.
Nice. Yeah, I am not an artist at all. All of this looks like magic to me. It's like I'm a caveman looking at modern person who's just creating magic. It's super cool to watch, especially from where we started, where you said you just started with the body and the frame, and building from there, getting to this point in the process. Do you remember sort of the well, I guess it's difficult to say when you start feeling like you've reached a certain stage of creating, because especially listening to you talk, you're always learning, you're always sort of working to better yourself, you're finding new disciplines, you're doing those things. Where was there a point where you looked at your work and you're like, hey, I like that feels good, I'm going to keep pushing from here? Was there a book or a page or some moment you remember from that?
Yeah, that is a tough question. And I'll say this. There was one moment, and I was already working in the industry for a few years at this point, and I was working on a project for another company that I had a really good time with it, but I was not sure what I was going to do with it. And sometimes you're just kind of going through, because it was not what I normally have ever done before. And I kind of got to this point in this page where, and it's something simple. It wasn't even like a really exciting page per se. It was a guy standing in front of these computer banks, and I was just going through this, because for a lot of years I was struggling with how to place blacks on the page, in the sense of, like, I used to draw very openly, with no real detail. It was structure based, sure, but when you're drawing comics, especially with a general limited kind of way to add, a good way to add depth is to learn how to lay blacks on your figure, on your backgrounds, to show different aspects to the drawing. And one of the things of drawing, say, something like a guy standing in front of a bank of computers, is that the majority of what you would generally see is dark colors because the light is facing them while you are seeing from behind. And I found that very, very difficult. And then somewhere along the lines of me trying to figure this shot out, I kind of just came to a realization that of how to do it. And it was years and years of just, going over things and being too scared to do something like professionally, in my professional work. And then getting to a point where I was like, okay, I think this is it. I think I got this. Right. And it was that moment. And ever since then, and then I kind of carried it on with drawing digitally, because one of the benefits of drawing digitally is that I could test out a couple looks without ever having to commit to it.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you could argue that that's my problem. It's commitment. Yeah.
We've got some more questions and comments in here over on Facebook. Mark Roseland says, Marcus Toe is amazing. Love this video, and thank you for sharing your time with us.
Mark is a dear friend of mine from my time, with the Michael Turner's company, and he was always a great supporter of my work, and we were kind of both, young and breaking into the industry in a lot of ways through those times. So my time living in LA with Mark and stuff were some of the greatest times of my life, and I really miss them, and I'm glad to see him doing well.
Yeah, that's very sweet. Let's see, we've got two over here on Twitch. I'm going to go with Washi2017 asks, what is the hardest part in this drawing, in your opinion?
Oh, the coloring. Mostly because a lot of it is making up decisions that I'm not necessarily used to doing. I think that drawing in a lot of ways is a bunch of decision making that may or may never work out. And a lot of it is kind of, like even something small, what a lot of people don't, I think, forget or don't realize when you're drawing comics. And this isn't necessarily one of those times, but, we had to make a lot of decisions. We had to make a lot of decisions based on, things like, what the person is going to be wearing as a, what do their apartments look like? What things do they like to eat? Because when you're drawing them eating at a cafe, it's not just anything, right? Like, and it goes along the same lines, is that we're drawing these things and making up so many decisions all at once. Whether or not the light source hits his face this way or that way. It's kind of interesting how much we have to think about, and decision making is always kind of the part that takes the longest, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair. Before we get into the next question, I just want to remind everyone that this stream is sponsored. This stream is presented by Marvel Strike Force. Marvel Strike Force is a turn-based squad RPG where superheroes and supervillains can team up to fight against enemy threats like Ultimus and Doctor Doom. And the Shang-Chi that Marcus is drawing here is inspired by the character from Marvel Studios, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, the costume of which is also now available in Marvel Strike Force, and we actually have a video here of some gameplay showing off Shang-Chi in his MCU-inspired battle armor. Let's take a look. We have another question from Twitch user MeepDragon56, who asks, how did you learn anatomy which I think is an interesting question because, as you mentioned, your mom, taught you some drawing early on, and you learn in different ways. Was there something specific about anatomy that did you read books or study movies? What was it for you specifically about the anatomical part of drawing?
I mean, I would argue like all of the above in a lot of ways. There, a lot of it is just watching and looking at the world, learning how to look. It's kind of a weird kind of thing to say because, what are you looking at? And so I always, like I'm always looking at things, kind of looking like how does that work, and how does that how does a wheel turn on a car? Like you understand it, but it takes, you know, a rotary system attached to the engine and transmission and all those kind of things that kind of make you understand, oh, okay, that's how it all kind of works in as a mechanical thing. And not, I mean, I know not everyone is like that, but I just like kind of figuring those things out, even if I am not particularly versed at explaining it. But it's funny how I kind of take what I was normally doing anyways, and then making it into a job.
Yeah. Over on YouTube, Metal Grim, which is a great name, Metal Grim. Metal Grim asks, how long does it take normally for you to finish one page of a comic book?
Well, it's hard to quantify it in a single page term. You could say that my goal generally when I get a book is to ask for about 5 weeks per issue, and each issue is about 20-ish pages. So if you break the math up, you could argue that it would take me, 30 days to draw 20 pages, so or 35 or so paid days to draw 20 pages, and something like that. So yeah, I mean, and everyone's a different a different one, because some pages are easier than others. But I think for most people, generally, you would want to draw, learn to be able to get to a point where you can draw a page a day.
Yeah, unless you're someone like Mark Bagley who draws 30 pages a day.
Yeah.
And has been doing it for 35 years. Is
Yeah.
somehow a superhuman.
Oh, Mark Bagley is so
over on Facebook.
awesome.
Yeah, he's amazing. Over on Facebook, Yasar Samin says, "I love Marcus's work. I've been a fan since New Avengers."
Oh, awesome! Thank you.
Yeah, I love that New Avengers run. That was with Al, right? Al Ewing.
Yes.
Yeah, some really fun comics. Great team, cool squad. I like that a lot. Over on Twitch, Buchenred 1442 says, when drawing, how do you determine the drape and fold on the clothing to make it realistic?
I mean, that goes along with what I was saying earlier about structure. If you understand the structure of a body and how things react to it, then when you try to recreate it, you'll get a better result. A lot of this stuff I'm just kind of making up because I'm like, I think that's how it works. but like, 'cause especially if for this live draw, I'm trying to go pretty fast, so I'm not thinking too much about it. But a lot of it is practiced. I've drawn so many pages and so many times where I'd have to draw, people in different clothing, all over the place, that at this point sometimes it's second nature, because I've studied already the way, say, a shirt folds under the armpit, and then the elbows, and how the shirt would react when you twist your arm, and a lot of it, like I said, is kind of just observing the world around us, and how everything works, and how it it shapes up with everything else around it, around you know, the world we live in, really, if you think about it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, thinking of the way you're talking about it, it also makes me think of your work on Excalibur and a lot of the, there's characters with very different fabrics and costumes. You've got some sort of like, the druidish characters and their like large sort of flowy bits, or you've got dragons and you've got Apocalypse and with his cool like more modern look and tons of other characters. Like there's some really cool things. I highly suggest that everybody who's watching the stream go check out Marcus's work on Excalibur over the last couple years, which is really cool to see.
See
if nothing else, clothing. Check out the clothing, y'all. Another Facebook message from Yasar Samin says, what are your tips to artists who want to start comic books and get into the comic book industry? Like, what are the things you wished you knew when you were starting?
Well, when I first started, the main thing I tried to remind myself was that I'm here because I want to draw comics, right? So I spent a lot of time studying how to, how to draw and tell a story. That's the biggest thing that, you as a person that wants to get into it does, is to tell a story. And a lot of the storytelling techniques, they don't really change that much over the years. You could learn from past greats, current greats, whoever you wish, because a lot of it stems from you trying to mimic the people that you really like, right? So, yeah, I mean, I really thought I always push people to try to draw a story, like come up with any story, whether it be your own story or a sample from you found on the internet. It doesn't matter. You're practicing. You're really just practicing how to convey a message across to your audience in picture format. And I would say do as many of those as you can. What I did when I first started was I took just really simple, came up with very simple 4-page stories, whether it be, a modern, a superhero one, or even just like I had broken up with someone at the time and I wrote a story about it, like things like that, where I kind of took a personal event and I thought to myself, I have a story to tell, and this is a way I could tell it, and do more of that as much as you can, to kind of learn how to do it. Because if you want to get into comics, you have to learn how to draw the comics. You have to learn how to tell the story. You have to learn how to express things without words in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you never know. You might get an assignment to do a silent issue. And
oh yeah,
have you done a fully silent issue?
Oh, not like not professionally. I did a whole silent issue for fun. Yeah. So, like my own thing that I did for myself. So, but that's what I mean by practicing a lot, right? A lot of these things kind of come from you experimenting with your own work and then finding what you like to do and what you don't like to do.
Yeah. Over on Facebook, Bottlehell Mashigo asks, when you draw comics, what do you focus on? Is it texture, color, or balance?
The first thing I really focus on is story. I know I keep on harking back at it, but that is generally what I do. Yeah. And, a lot of it, but that being said, I also, really push on basically I'll find a way to learn often. So if let's say lately I felt like my work was lacking texture. It felt flat. It felt like it needed something more to the work that I'm putting out there right now. So every issue I'll try to find something where I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus on just drawing something and making sure it feels like it has more, depth and texture and more to it than what I've been showing so far. So it really allows me to kind of give myself kind of like a task to keep everything fresh, and it also allows me to know that I'm capable of doing things differently than I normally do. So stories first, and then everything else is just what I'm looking to try to figure out on a personal note afterwards.
What about for a cover? If you're doing a cover, because sometimes a cover has, a story beat, or it's, sometimes they're just not. They're just a cool friggin' image. What is it for you that you focus on when you do?
It's interesting because I feel like I struggle with covers a lot. That is one thing I really feel like I struggle with, and it's something different all the time. So covers, in a lot of ways, are unique because, like I said, you're trying to tell a story with just one image, a single image that will tell the audience as much as or it could just be a cool image, but generally you want to kind of tell us a story with your cover. And you have that, then you have kind of placement. You want to work on shapes a lot of times because there's a lot of placement of characters can create visual interests that you have with the single image. I don't know. Color schemes can also help really push the message across. Covers are a very interesting kind of thing to talk about because I'm still really trying to learn myself and how best to kind of make those things happen and come to life.
Yeah. Tucker, the Marcus, we have about 10 more minutes in the stream.
Cool. I'll do this then. I will add. So I pre-drew a background that we can add to this, and
look at that.
Then I'll use the next 5 or 10 minutes to kind of zhuzh it up a little bit. How about that?
I love it. Heck yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. Awesome. Very, very cool. Let's take the art full screen, and so if we can see that for everybody on the stream, yeah, that looks really cool. Very neat.
Right. So this one's the kind of fun thing that I'm still learning myself how to do is special effects. We have a general idea of special effects, but yeah, it's one of those things that I'm still kind of figuring out myself.
Sure. We did a whole series of episodes on. I host 2 of the Marvel podcasts, and one of them is called Marvel's Pull List, and we did a whole month on Marvel's What If comics. With different comics, and we talked to some, Ralph Macchio and Peter B. Ellis, and but we went into doing some issues on the 70s books, and there's some really cool artists that I think it was Butch Geist, some wild stuff with colors that they just looked like fluorescent, and he had a technique that he was using back 40 odd years ago that just looks so wild and so cool. Even to this day, I was looking at it in Marvel Unlimited or even in the hard copies I have behind me. It's like, man, that's some really cool stuff. That just the things that but blows my mind sometimes. It's pretty neat.
No, for sure, and I think a lot of it is how to make color work for you, right? Because especially back then, you didn't have a lot of these like layers and different kind of tools that you could use. It was all just kind of a mix of colors and how to kind of take that and also kind of give you the feeling that you want the audience to feel. And it's pretty amazing. And I am the first to admit how limited my knowledge of color is, but it's always fun to try. And this is the thing about art, and I hope those of you that are drawing along as well understand, or want to be creators as well. But is that this is fun? Like you should have fun with it. If you want to make it a job, that's cool. But it always starts from kind of practicing and doing fun stuff that makes you happy.
Yeah. Yeah, fun is super important. Hopefully you can find some in there. Over on Twitch, Washi2017 says, I could never do something like this, which never say never.
You might be able to, and that's the thing. Yeah,
you
never say never.
During this stream, you got to practice, you got to work at it.
Yep. And honestly, not everything you do is going to be great. We'll be honest. It just... You have to know that that's just the kind of what it is, right? And be okay with mucking up and being okay with just the feeling that you're learning something from every attempt at something. And a lot of times it'll look different than what you might think it is, but it might even be better sometimes, right? That's the thing. We're all just kind of mucking about in the mud and seeing what works.
Fair enough. I like the effects you have there for, taking that fire and giving it, or that effect and giving it a cool look. It seems so simple in some ways, but it's still like doing that and making that effect. You have to have some understanding of the whole picture and what you're trying to do, which I think is important for anybody who's watching, and again, as you mentioned, is drawing along, thinking about the entire piece as you work through each individual step. As anybody who's watching us here, if you have missed it, you are watching Marvel's How to Draw live, presented by Marvel Strike Force. We have Marvel Comics artist Marcus To drawing Shang-Chi in the image inspired by the character from Marvel Studios' Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, the costume of which will be available in Marvel Strike Force. And Shang-Chi is already in there. There's a really cool event going on for the next week and change, where you can play and get this costume as you play through. But he's got some cool moves. He beats the crap out of the bad guys, or sometimes the good guys, depending on your squad and what you're doing in the game, which is a lot of fun.
All right, I think I'm almost done, or else I'm mainly just kind of messing about right now, just to kind of like keep on adding some things. But yeah, I mean, this part of it, I was actually planning to make it a little bit more smoke-like, but I was kind of messing around with this fingertip blur brush, and it started giving me some interesting strokes that I'm just kind of going with, and I think that's the thing about, don't be scared of trying different things, because you don't know what you'll get sometimes, and you'll be pleasantly surprised when you try different things, and it gives you something you never thought that you were going to go with. So
for sure, it looks great.
Yeah, I think we're done here.
Obviously, you're right on. Well done. Very, very cool. Everybody, be sure to check out Shang-Chi in Marvel Strike Force, free to download in the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. Experience Marvel Studios' Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings in theaters now. And the movie's awesome. Marcus and I have already seen it. We loved it. You should go see it too. Marcus, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. Our first time having a chat, and you were wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been so much fun. I mean, this is here final product for the most part, and Yeah, I guess that was a good hour and a little bit.
Yeah, it's pretty damn cool. So thank you to Marcus Toe, and thank you to everyone who has been joining us on our streams across the way. I'm Ryan Panagos, aka Agent M. This has been Marvel How to Draw Live, presented by Marvel Strike Force.